So, guys, I want to talk about AEW All In, and I really want to say that one of the big detriments of the show is the Hurt Syndicate. Like, they're a very, very deserving team, and Montel Ventavis Porter, obviously, he deserves a pay raise for all the, spitting that hot fire on the microphone that he does. And, like Shelton Benjamin, when he first started here, he had a bunch of really great matches. Like, honestly, he looked like he was kind of like a little bit like a Will Ospreay in a way. Like, he can have long matches, he can do big power stuff. And then you have Bobby Lashley, and this is a company that doesn't really appreciate, bigger, stronger wrestlers, unless your name is Mortos, who's sleeping with Mercedes Moné. Good job, my nigga. And then also, too, Samoa motherfucking Joe. And then now you have Bobby Lashley. Like, these three motherfuckers are like, the big guys who are actually appreciated in this company. Powerhouse Hobbs, he's kind of like 50-50. But one of the bad things about the Hurt Syndicate is that they're not in a good tag team division. So I said to myself, who can actually challenge the Hurt Syndicate for the tag team titles and actually looking good on an all-in card? And the team that I have is the House of Black. And for a lot of reasons. Number one is Brody King. That, first of all, Brody King got a lot of, talk for wearing the no ice shirt. So obviously, do you want to capitalize on controversy? Do you want to capitalize on somebody that's being talked about? Do you want to capitalize on somebody who made himself a babyface by making a political statement? Kind of makes sense, really. As Eric Bischoff said, as he famously said, controversy creates cash. The another thing is that when he had a match with Hechicero, he did like head scissors. And then the other thing about Brody King is that he's one of those big, strong, badass motherfucker wrestlers. Like, you look at how big he is. Like, imagine him doing a splash on Bobby Lashley. Imagine Bobby Lashley grabbing that splash and slamming his ass down, really, And then the other thing, too, is that obviously with Brody King, it's actually surprising. He's been in the House of Black for all these years, but he's never been a tag team champion. So you could do something like that. And then also the other thing, too, is that, you have Bobby Lashley and Brody King. Like, these are these big, bad powerhouse motherfuckers. And then you have Buddy Matthews versus Shelton, and they can have a really great match. Like, Buddy Matthews doesn't do that much, really, but he's had matches with Okada. So with Buddy Matthews, there's something for him to do, really. Like, he can be, like, he's a good counterpart to Shelton. And then the other thing, too, is that you can even have MVP and Julia Hart, like, she's spitting black mist on him, or MJF, really. There's so many, like, dynamics in that. And I think my big worry is that they may say, no, we're going to do Kevin Knight and Mike Bailey, and that's a bad match because they just got destroyed last week. They got destroyed this week. And then the other issue is that, obviously, these guys are small. They look like, high school freshmen. So it's just not, it doesn't look legitimate. You might as well do a 2-on-1 match against Bobby Lashley if you want to actually, have something that looks like credible. The other issue is you look at the Outrunners, and they have like this 1980s thing, and they're saying, I don't know, Turbo, you son of a bitch, or whatever. They don't take themselves seriously. They're kind of like goofy. And then you also have Dustin and Sammy, and you can't do that because they already had a feud at All In. And then there's other teams like Don Cal's family. And I think Josh Alexander and Konosuke Takeshita versus Shelton and Bobby would be an excellent match. That would look very fucking awesome, but it doesn't make sense to do villain versus villain. Unless both of them are like, we want to gain all the titles, really. So, and then Ricochet's a good wrestler, but the problem is you need a big powerhouse. Like, if you did Ricochet and Wardlow, that would make sense. I think that it makes a lot of sense for the Ops to face the Death Riders, like 3 members of the Death Riders. So you can't have the Ops, but Powerhouse Hobbs and Samoa Joe versus Bobby and Shelton would be a pay-per-view level match, really. But they're occupied with the Death Riders, so it doesn't make sense for them to jump into this one. So I think, like, legitimately the best team that they can do for the Hurt Syndicate is definitely the House of Black. And I also will say you could do Max Caster and Anthony Bowens, but they separated. But that would have been a good thing, too, because Max Caster and Anthony Bowens, they know how to get charisma from the crowd, really, So, Unfortunately, they took that away when they separated. So you can't do Anthony Bowens and Max Caster, but they were together and part of the Acclaimed, as an underdog team, as two underdogs against like these two veterans and a powerhouse veteran and Bobby Lashley, that would work really. But since you don't have that, Brody King and Buddy Matthews are the right opponents for them, because again, Bobby and Brody, both big powerhouses, you have one side, people want to hurt people in the Hurt Syndicate, and Brody King, like representing, like speak out against injustices, being liked by people, being a workhorse, he's not picking on people, he has some pride and integrity, so it's integrity versus no integrity type of thing, really. So there is a story there, really. And then, like I've said with Brody King, imagine him throwing around Bobby Lashley. Imagine Bobby Lashley throwing him around, and then they never faced before. But and it's also like good for AEW. You see, like Goliath versus Goliath, really. Goliath versus Samson, type of thing, really. It really just works itself, really. So, this is something that I do hope for, but I think a lot of people should advocate for this. And also, too, with Brody King, he's done a lot for the company, So what are you going to do? Are you going to put him in, like, the Casino Gauntlet, and he's not going to win? Because I don't think that he would win that. And I also really feel that he's been lost on the roster. He's kind of been like Mark Briscoe and, a few other people on the roster where he shows up, he does the right thing. He has a lot of potential, but he's not given a good direction, really. But I think that obviously, for the Hurt Syndicate, they have to fight people that are legitimate challenges for them. And House of Black has that in a lot of ways. So I do hope for that. And I will advocate that Hurt Syndicate versus the House of Black is the right match for AEW All In. And I hope people can stand by me on this one. Because honestly, like I said, after they gave that ass whooping to Hong Kong Phooey and Kevin Knight, I felt really sad for the Hurt Syndicate. I was like, man, they don't have good opponents. You cannot do something like have people like Bayley and Kevin Knight because they just got destroyed, really. So what happens if they get too full on Bobby Lashley or Shelton? That's going to look very awkward as fuck, really. And then also, if they just annihilate them in like 1 or 2 minutes, then, that's not something captivating for the crowd, really. If you want something captivating, go 15, 20 minutes with Brody King and Buddy Matthews. Like, that would be the thing to do. And number 2 should be the Don Callis family, because I think like Bobby Lashley and Shelton versus Josh Alexander, a former TNA champion like Bobby Lashley. And I also think that, Konosuke Takeshita, who is a very athletic wrestler, Blue Thunder Bomb against Shelton would be the good thing, would be the next best thing, really. And then you can set up Takeshita versus MJF, because I think that would be a really great match. That's a kind of a good matchup. So, like I said, that ultimately, I think for All In, Brody King and Buddy Matthews, the House of Black versus the Hurt Syndicate is the right match, is the appropriate match for the Hurt Syndicate. So that way, that talent that they have is not being wasted on, Hong Kong Phooey and Kevin Knight, and Private Party is not here. They're going to go suck the dicks of the WWE, really, So, taking those shots of Triple H, and Triple H and Khan's spooge, over in WWE, So, Hurt Syndicate, if you want to give them a good challenge, if you want them to actually have opponents that matter, the House of Black is your money in the bank on that. And I hope that happens. I pray for that to happen. And I'm going to tell Tony Khan to do that. Can you get off the booger sugar and book actually a match that people want to see and a good challenge for the Hurt Syndicate?